Welcome to the Pitchwerks podcast. I'm Scott McTaggart. Over the last 20 years, I've been a sales rep, a marketer, a manager, an executive, a consultant, advisor. This show is designed to give you access to my list of contacts so that you can learn more about how to present your ideas at work and succeed in your career.
Startups and salespeople, marketers and managers from the Epicast Network in Pittsburgh. It's the Pitchwerks podcast.
True. It's funny because I felt like we did the opposite, where we were too willing to listen to every demand thrown at us when we first started. It was like, because we went into it knowing that's like, oh, we can't have a big ego. We kind of got to go in just centered. But then what ended up happening is every which way, like they're like, oh, this product should have this and that. And we're like, that's a great idea. Let's do that. Let's do that.
Hey everybody, it's Scott. This is Wednesday. Welcome back to your Pitchwerks podcast. I appreciate you tuning in, and as such, I am going to deliver a guest that I think you're going to really enjoy. And in a weird turn of events, for me at least, this is a guy who seems to match me on intensity, which that's not every day that you find that. So Andy Chan, CEO, founder of VIT Initiative. I should say co-founder. It's a little bit more polite and politic when you actually call him correctly. Sorry, Connor, I didn't mean any offense. So we're talking about workplace safety, which is an old problem, and technology to sort of mitigate that, which is brand new. And here's a young guy who came in here basically just crashing these two things together. Before we jump in, though, I'm going to heckle you and say that I want you to subscribe. Go into the podcast app of your choice, push the button, make sure that you get this show delivered every single Wednesday morning. It's going to be great, I promise. You get it a few hours earlier than everybody else, and you don't have to remember. Sales, marketing, startups, our thing. Wednesday mornings. Let's talk to Andy. The gentleman sitting directly across from me is Andy Chan. He is the founder and CEO of VIT Initiative. And we got to get into exactly what all of that is, but we got to try to keep it fairly calm. We're two people who are very highly verbal, and this is just already kind of crackling right now. How are you today, sir?
I am great, Scott.
I love the fact that you're like focusing. You're like, I am great. What was the question? Yeah, let's deliver the answer. It's already just been all over the road. I
was just like, I'm so proud of you. You got the title, the name, everything.
Don't rub it in. You know that I did multiple takes, and that's not fair. And yes, I'm going to leave that in. I'm going to leave it in so everybody knows that I need multiple takes. I'm bad with names, and oh boy. The 6th episode of this show, it took me I'm going to say 7 times to get the guy's company name right, because I kept reversing the order. It was blank and blank, communication and crisis, I believe is correct. But now that I think that that's correct, it's probably wrong. And I kept saying it in the opposite order. And he's looking at me like, you sweet, sweet boy.
You sweet, sweet boy.
you big, gorgeous dummy. Anyway. So, Andy, I had a few people tell me that I needed to talk to you. And I got to tell you, you know what? I see what they meant. VIT, tell me what the initiative actually is.
Yes. So the initiative aspect, it's funny because the name came from a high school nonprofit that we did.
Nice.
But we came to college at CMU, and we wanted to do a business and didn't really know what the name is. So we just kind of like, okay, it's a generic VIT Initiative. Who knows what it is? Kind of like Google. So you just got kind of stolen.
Yeah, it sounds like it might be the superhero villain behind the scenes.
Yeah, exactly. But what we essentially do is we're a workplace safety company. We help heavy labor industries like manufacturing, logistics, and we help train and coach their employees to live safely, because strain and sprain injuries cost the U.S. economy like $70 billion.
You're killing my whole villain vibe, man. That's how
I know. I'm sorry. Thanks. I don't know. We could be villains against companies that are just trying to get rid of everyone, right? Just everyone's like, everyone should be automated. I don't know. Robots here, there, yeah.
I'm going to stick with not a villain. Yeah. If that's cool with you.
I would, that sounds pretty sweet. Yeah.
All right, very good. So a lot of the people that told me that I needed you talking to you were actually in the Alpha Lab gear universe, right?
Makes sense, yeah.
Very high praise from those folks.
Well, Scott, I'm a big deal in Alpha Lab gear.
Oh, I'm a very important businessman. Well, you kind of are, right? I mean, I know you're.
I like to think so.
No, you're kind of downplaying it, but I want to ask you a question that's important to me to start with, which is, do you ever get the feeling like not enough people are making hardware products?
That's an excellent question. I'm not gonna lie, I've never thought about it, but now that I'm thinking about that, I'm like, aren't there enough people making hardware
It
products?
feels like it's out of balance.
It definitely is out of balance. If anything, I felt like I've seen the trend where a lot of my friends, even our own company, we started like heavy hardware.
Yeah.
And then over time where, we realize, wow, supply chain is hard. There's real cost of labor and parts. And then what ends up happening with a lot of the hardware companies is that we start transitioning into software companies.
Yes. But I do think that people generally say, and actually I've heard it from the Alpha Lab Gear community, that they're tired of hearing people say that hardware is difficult, right? Or physical products are hard, right?
But it's true. I mean, it is hard.
I mean, I don't know.
I think so. Do you
I've never
not?
done a hardware product. That's kind of where I'm coming from. I don't know enough to make the comment. It seems like it could be.
Yeah. No, I would definitely say it is very difficult because not only do you have to still do all the software stuff a software company needs to do,
Yeah.
now you have to introduce hardware, you got to do the firmware, the component design, the supply chain logistics. Like you're basically just tacking on a whole nother like can of worms. And
Yeah.
what ends up happening for the funding is you get still the same funding as a software company, but then it's really like going to take you half as far. So, and especially in Pittsburgh, where it's like it's a thriving scene, but it's obviously still a smaller ecosystem comparatively to some of the other places like the Bay Area and New York.
Let me pause you for a second. Do you
yeah.
mean startups in general, or are you talking about hardware startups right now when you say it's a smaller ecosystem?
I would say both.
I think so too, but
yeah,
I mean,
both.
my assumptions are dangerous because they're uninformed.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, here's some stuff I just came up with on the fly, and let's see whether or not you agree that it's true. And people would go, yes, that does sound like it could be true.
Yeah.
And now you got a problem because multiple people are nodding along with what is an empty assumption.
Well, I think what's funny is like, so as a young founder coming into the ecosystem, there's this complex where you're a young founder, you want to find mentors, and everyone's like, wanting to spew their, I don't want to say spew, but just, give you advice, right? But what I noticed a lot of times was sometimes people would say something about the ecosystem or something, and I'd be like, why do you think that?
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, actually, well, I guess maybe because I talked to like, 5 people here and stuff. And then I was like, oh, that's interesting. So like you said, it just kind of like some things are just like from their own, like, I don't know where they kind of got that notion.
Well, we still have a problem that we haven't cleaned out all the cobwebs on the everybody knows stuff, right?
Sure,
There's still
sure.
a bunch of people who are lagging,
Yeah.
who are still clinging to old beliefs. Everybody knows that there's no money in Pittsburgh, right? Which is not entirely true.
It's not entirely true. Right. Exactly.
There are people who are getting funded, right?
Absolutely.
So you can't say everybody knows there's no money, right?
Yeah.
You can say everybody knows that it's harder, and that might be true. I believe it to be true, but I mean, I can't tell you the last time I ran market data on it. I mean, I'm going based on anecdotal evidence and, people that I believe have a shot at getting funded. But no one cares what I think. I haven't actually done the due diligence. Everybody knows that CMU is a great place to, find a startup founder. Okay, well, that turns out to be true because a lot of you do come out of there.
Actually, it was really funny because obviously my co-founder and I came from CMU, and a couple of our friends came out of CMU as well. But CMU is actually surprised. It's changing now, but when we started like 5 years ago, it was a surprisingly hard place to find co-founders because just the mindset there was that a lot of people weren't actually into startups. Like the whole point of CMU, the reason you went there is to get a really nice job at like the Google, Facebooks of the world, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. But it was interesting in just terms of like the slant, like just a viewpoint of where people wanted to go.
Put this in context for me. How old are you?
I am a grand old 23-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it changes the conversation.
Yeah,
right?
it does. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just like if you wanted to go there wanting to find co-founders, it became tricky because most people are just kind of like, I don't know. I don't really feel startups. But like,
you've got a pretty outgoing personality, right?
Well, that could be it too.
No. But I mean, that's a huge asset, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of people who want to work in the various and sundry nerd arts, right? They don't have that outgoing personality, and they know that they've got what it takes to take over the world. If they could just come over that, like, fear of like talking to 1,000 customers.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point, Scott. I mean, like, to be fair, even with my co-founder and I, we were talking like a year before we both decided to leave school.
Yeah.
And it was a long, because my co-founder was more the was it just the engineer type. And I came from an engineer background, but I was always the one like just bouncing off walls. Like, let's go talk to clients. Let's go like close
It takes
deals.
that. You've got to have that power source or you're just going to run out of gas. Yeah. What is a young guy doing working on workplace safety?
Yeah, so we definitely had no interest initially because we didn't even know that was an issue, quite frankly. We got into it because my co-founder and I met on the football team. And, you know, like any other football bros, we were talking about what we wanted to do for the rest of our lives with engineering. Obviously.
Yeah.
So a kind of crazy thing happened where I ended up breaking my back, which ended my football career.
Yeah.
It's also insane how long you can go on a broken back, by the way, Scott.
Yeah.
Like I went a year on this thing and just didn't
Didn't know.
It was I think it's a standard like male syndrome / football dude syndrome where you're like, just walk it off, man. Like, okay, cool.
I mean, maybe, right?
Yeah, but so that like through rehab of that made me think like, well, I've been injured before. Like a lot of people have been injured before. And so we were thinking we should take all the advancements currently on wearable IoT, like the big data, you know, buzzword,
Right.
to basically help mitigate injuries and help accelerate the recovery process. And that's when we got into Alpha Lab Gear. So this was the end of 2015. This is when we pitched the idea like, okay, we want to revolutionize athlete mitigation injuries, stuff like that, right? And then we did 2 months worth of market research and found out that athletes are incredibly crowded space. And quite frankly, with users, there's a lot of misconceptions of what wearables can and cannot do. So
that's a tremendous point.
Exactly. So we were like going to gyms and stuff, and we're talking to users like, oh, like wouldn't it be cool if this device like captured the way you lift and blah blah blah. And they're like, well, I thought Fitbit did that, and we're like,
not even close.
yeah, like that's not at all. But and then that's when we kind of accidentally got introduced to the Giant Eagles of the world, UPSs, you know, these big workplace chains that have a lot of logistics and lifting operations. And we started talking and they're like, hey guys, so, you know, you're talking about athletes, but we have a lot of injuries with what they call strain and sprain injuries. And that's basically like repetitive stress and then like lifting things that are too heavy, stuff like that. And then
it's hard to overstate the impact that has on somebody when that's their income.
Yeah.
If your job, your $50,000, $60,000 a year job depends on you being able to do this and you can't.
Yeah.
And you're down for 6 weeks, 12 weeks. I mean, these are long periods where you can't do the thing you're used to doing. I mean, it's very impactful on a lot of people's lives. And don't take this as a knock against you, but that's kind of what I meant when I said, like, what is a young guy doing realizing that, right? Because it's an
true,
experience question. It's like, how did you realize that? And now that I understand it's a market research avenue that you follow to get there, it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. It's not like I sprung out of bed like kicking. Like
we've got to make sure that the guy who works in the warehouse doesn't get a repetitive strain injury.
Exactly.
Is not something I expected you to come up on.
Really, I wish my story is like instead of breaking my back in football, I was like, you know, a hardworking American. I was working at Home Depot, and then my back went out.
I don't think you want that. No, I don't think that you want that story at all. I think your story's fine the way it is.
Story is fine.
Okay,
there you go.
So what's your co-founder's name?
Connor Young.
That way we can keep saying Connor instead of your co-founder.
Exactly.
I have a feeling Connor's going to keep coming back.
Yeah, Connor, this for you, baby.
Connor, we miss you. I mean, I can't miss you since I haven't met you, but, you know, I mean, I'm sure I miss you
in spirit.
Proactively. Yes.
Proactively.
The total package is the person who can build the product, who can talk to the customer, and can interpret that feedback without any sort of wound to their ego or their psyche, right? So I bring you a product, you tell me what you think of the product, I make the changes to the product, and I don't have to go in a corner and cry about it.
Yes.
Because like I put my ego on the line, I gambled and showed it to you. So you have a really good set of cards that you're holding right now.
True. It's funny because I felt like we did the opposite where we were too willing to listen to every demand thrown at us when we first started. It was like, because we went into it knowing that's like, oh, we can't have a big ego. We kind of got to go in just centered. But then what ended up happening is every which way, like they're like, oh, this product should have this and that. And we're like, that's a great idea. Let's do that. And what ended up happening was we were just going in circles for, you know, a couple of months. And then we started thinking like, wow, we have to really take our time and deliberately think is this feature going to help the next set? And
There's
stuff.
this really hardcore, intense founder that I know that I'm reluctant to name like by name right now, but
You can't lead that and be
yes,
like,
I can.
can't.
Bet me, I can. Yes,
Well, I mean, what do we got, Scott? We got like a penny over here.
we're not naming names on this one.
Okay.
They will know who I mean.
All right, you know who you are.
Yeah, you do. And every time I would make a suggestion of what I thought might improve the product, they would ask me how many I would buy if they made that change. Every single time.
Oh, that's a good one. But you're not really the target. Were you the target customer?
Probably not.
Okay, so it doesn't,
Probably not, but that's not the point. You need to stay focused on that.
No,
and
that's true, yeah.
this was a like spring-loaded response built into the whole, like the way that they thought about their day. So I come to you.
That's good, yeah.
Yeah, and I say, Andy, here's what I think you ought to put in your next run of product. And you go, well, how many can I sell you if I do that? Mm-hmm. Whoa, wait a minute. I was just trying to make a helpful suggestion. Like, well, the only way that's helpful is if you're a customer or you represent other customers.
Yes.
Like you've done the research, you've done, some survey somewhere. And again, it's a really intense way to interact with people, but it does keep you focused. And focus is really hard to come by in anything that's not built yet. Not fully built anyway, right?
Yeah.
You guys are just getting started in a lot of ways compared to some of your competitors. Like we're here in Pittsburgh, which means we're in the shadow of a company like Mind Safety Appliances, right?
Yes, correct.
Who's been around for 100 years, right? And they're not in the same space as you. But if that's the expectation you have as the buyer, that's what a safety company looks like. You kind of have to project that. Like you have to. There's some expectation that you feel obligated to meet to be like the other safety company. I don't know.
Oh man, definitely. Like, so especially as a young founder coming out and energetic, I'm always kind of, I don't want to say winging like this Job Zuckerberg approach of just like, yeah, we're young, we break things, you go fast.
We're here to change everything.
Exactly, man, bro. Like blah blah blah. And
for those of you that are sitting at home, by the way, there's a lot of hand gesturing while we speak right now. There is an overabundance of gesticulation, and there's a definite sort of like frat bro vibe as we drop these interesting quotes. I'm just gonna come and change your world, brah.
Yeah, I feel like now we need Pitchwork like fraternity lettering shirts.
No, I'm just going to go out to my car. I'm going to get my sunglasses. I'm going to put them on the back of my head and
there you go.
See if anybody's got an Ed Hardy shirt hanging around.
Ed Hardy shirt. There you go. No, you're not a frat bro either until you have the little things that attach to your glasses that you can like put around your neck.
Does it matter if they're prescription? Because they kind of are. They're really thick prescription.
Yeah. So back on topic. Come on, Scott.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My fault.
So yeah, as a young person, it was definitely the type of thing where we get the advice is during the sales pitch, like definitely don't come wear your startup t-shirt, like kind of wear more of a button down.
Yeah.
Come use words like ROI,
Right, yeah.
Don't say bro like more than once. Like don't say it at all. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. If you're going to ask me, I'm going to say bro probably doesn't belong in there, especially after we just, did that whole thing.
So
you can't overcome that though. Like, you can't become older. My advice is be what you are.
No, definitely. I think that's why I had such resistance. People are like, oh, like, you gotta like act more mature. But for me, I was like, I want to just be me, just like, kind of screw off.
I got enough to worry about without having to wear a mask.
Exactly. But that being said, what I learned is it's not like, and not in that I didn't want it to be not true to myself. But as I've grown older and more mature, I'm thinking, okay, it's not really, you're not being who you are. You're just being a more refined version of yourself. So
I hear what you're saying, but this is a really interesting dive right now because I think people will make excuses for whatever bad behavior by saying that they have to be themselves. So we have to sort of parse what does that mean, right? And I think when I say that you need to be natural and you need to be yourself, that has specific meaning for me in the sense that I want someone just to speak fluidly, honestly, and that means you don't lie about who you are, what the product is, what are its shortcomings. Like I love a sales pitch where somebody goes, we're a great fit for X and we're a bad fit for Y because you're doing my work for me on the other side of the table.
No, it's fair. I think people love it, both on investors and client side, like you said, when you can address forthcoming questions in advance. So they're like, well, what about, okay, good point. Like,
you're being yourself though. You are telling someone, don't buy from me if price is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Because I don't make enough units to be the cheapest thing on the market. But I think we have 2 or 3 features that speak to specific buyers. And then the customer goes, okay, so now what you're telling me is that if we run just a generic commodity bid, you won't win. And what I need to focus my effort on are these specific little line item features you're pointing out big enough for me to stick up for you inside my organization?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that I've learned over time with sales. Like, just obviously we started like 2 years ago. And when I first started, I did not do that at all. Yeah. But now as sales have, I've been more mature as a salesperson. It's gotten a lot better. So even when we first started, I mean, like, it took us months and maybe like 12 months to close a client. Now we can probably close a client in like 30, 45 day time frame.
Which is really, I mean, for a B2B sales cycle, that's pretty much exactly where you need to be.
Yeah. And not only that, we learned, I don't even know why we thought this was a great idea. Well, I do know why, but we initially target big companies, like Fortune 500 companies, because the idea was like, oh, you kind of penetrate in, but then the sale at the end of the day is huge. Huge.
I don't think there's a right answer.
No, it's not a right answer. It's really business dependent. But then the problem with that is it's longer sales cycles. And for us as a venture-backed company, we kind of wanted to show traction earlier on. And that's, that's how priority. That's how startups are kind of metricized. That's not a word, but you know what I mean.
It is today.
It is today, exactly.
Just for you.
On the Scot show. So, but then we started targeting some more mid-sized companies. And then that's when the deal flow is smaller initially, but we can get in way quicker. So we could talk to maybe 2 to 3 stakeholders and have a decision, yes, no. Versus Fortune 500, we'd be talking to like 10 different decision makers and just like, oh my Jesus.
So it's interesting though, because in the large organization, a lot of times they will have an innovations group. They will have a, like cutting edge group, like skunkworks type thinking, where they're like, some things just don't work. Like, and we're going to put it in this little quarantined work area, who will pick like, okay, you're going to be deployed in our Lansing, Michigan branch office to see how it goes, because they haven't run a pilot in a while. And I really like that. It does take a long time to get in the door though. Like B2B is what I grew up on. I'm really kind of bad with marketing to like residential, consumer type customers.
Really? I would not have gotten that at all. You strike me as such a like consumer facing dude.
I like end users, but I struggle.
I like end users. I like that.
I struggle with trying to rationalize a product to a consumer buyer. A B2B just feels more like that's where I live. I'm just more comfortable.
That's interesting.
I understand the buying mechanism inside that business, right? So like I was raised on some of these like the spin selling and the Miller Hyman strategic selling program, where they literally tell you like, here's these archetypes and here's these, like scoring systems that you can use so that you understand whether or not you are making any headway. Like, like when they say this, is it bad or is it good?
Yeah.
And in the consumer world, especially lately, I'm more and more detached from sort of what people want, how they communicate about it. I just don't feel at home at all. So that's just me talking.
That's fair.
It takes a long time though to get into those large organizations, and a couple singles or doubles helps you to speak to, you said you're venture backed, right? So when you're talking to the investors that made your product, I mean, let's not undersell it, right? They made your product possible.
Yeah, we'd definitely not be here today without
right.
that,
You want to be able to point to something and say like, no, it's not a barren wasteland in our CRM. There's actually people who went all the way through the funnel. They came out the other end and they made a deal with us.
Yeah, it makes for good case studies too when you have a big brand name and you can speak to that, like, oh, the people who are not early adopters, but they're like, well, this bigger company placed a bet, like, you guys should too. Especially in the art industry, when we first started, it was really hard to get people to adopt like new technologies for safety, and operations was the big sector of the business that was kind of taking lead. But even now with the rise of Amazon e-commerce, everyone's kind of feeling the pressure of like, we have to be smart in every aspect of our organization. So now it's starting to trickle down to safety.
They are coming for everybody.
Exactly. That's why I think now people are starting to get like, oh, like if we don't innovate, we're gonna like die.
Somebody is, and if it's not Amazon, it's going to be somebody else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Who has? I mean, you look at the way the inside of an Amazon center works. It's beautiful, and also a little scary because of how much innovation you weren't even exposed to is actually in use. When you see what they're doing in real life that you didn't even know existed in concept, I can understand somebody feeling that pressure.
Yeah, I don't think the general public even knows there's this company that sold for almost $1 billion to Amazon. It was called Kiva Robotics. And they basically, so when you're in a warehouse, you typically have to go grab a package, then put on a pallet, blah, blah, blah. But there's this robot that basically, it's like, imagine if you walk down a corridor, it's like a Harry Potter world, but then the corridor is like shift.
Oh, that's cool.
And so that's what all the corridors like that have the boxes are on these wheels and they move to you. So you just,
cool.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Like, so you just stand there. You still need to do the lifting, but you just stand there as they come. So you don't need to walk at least.
I mean, the Harry Potter analogy is great for that because, I mean, otherwise I don't know that I would have visualized it the same way. But that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. You're blowing my mind about something that not only was conceptualized already, commercialized already, but also acquired already.
Yeah, it's actually a funny story because, I mean, Amazon, I guess, has a history of doing this, but they kind of screwed over all the other companies because in order to implement this Kiva robotic system, you needed to like rebuild your warehouse essentially. Like,
wow.
Because you can't have walls and stuff. You need clear floor space for these robots to roam around. And so there were some big clients that like revamped their entire warehouse for this. And then Amazon bought them and then cut off all servicing to all the other like, so basically the other companies got screwed.
Okay, we're grabbing that. That's a case study, right? Because I say this a lot. Nobody wants to go first.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of those first mover disadvantages is, okay, so we did. Some poor guy at some company we don't know went up the chain and said, I saw this amazing Harry Potter-esque thing, right?
It's got wands and everything.
Yeah, for real. It's an amazing mind-bending adventure. And I need you to spend, let's go conservative. Let's say it's $1 million, right? Because between renovation, floor space, not being able to use the floor space, blah, blah, blah. It's got costs, right?
Yeah.
And then right before they cross the finish line, because of the volatile nature of startups and VCs and funding and just how quick change happens, a company that is entirely unrelated to robotics was actually hurt by moving too quickly.
Yeah.
And that is key to what we're talking about. Yeah. I bring 23-year-old Andy Chan in, right? And I want you to tell me, how are you going to reduce injuries for me? Somewhere rattling around in the back of my head, I want to know, if you sell this company, am I going to get hurt?
Yeah, for sure. It's an interesting question. Well, I think even for what you were saying about the early adopters, I would argue is like maybe other people weren't quick enough to offer Kiva another acquisition offer either.
Good point. But still, the customer is who I'm specifically thinking about right now.
Yeah.
If I'm the customer, I go to upstairs, and then they approve it, and I go upstairs again, and they approve it, and now I go upstairs to get a check. And that check clears, and we start moving things, and Amazon just literally just erases this vendor out of my vendor book. So I'm actually going to pitch it to you, or present it to you, and say like, okay, what is it about your approach that kind of protects that end user client that might trust you? Like, what happens if you got it acquired?
I mean, that's a good point. I mean, the only time the client would be hurt if it's some heinous reason that the acquirer of ours would be like, okay, as part of the deal, you have to cut servicing X, Y, and Z customers, right? Or like a majority of your customers. But quite frankly, we would probably never take that deal in the first place, because the whole point of an acquisition for us would be like, we want to go into a bigger ecosystem to deliver more value, not less value.
So now we're going to write that into customer agreements from now on. That's what we just did on this podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
I just gave your lawyers like 6 hours worth of work to do. I apologize in advance. All right, that's the end of the show. Thanks to Andy and all of his friends and colleagues over at VIT Initiative. Big problem, great solution. I'm interested to see where all of this goes. As for you, make sure you check us out on social media, always under Pitchwerks, Pitchwerks. You know what? Sometimes I get lonely. I just want you to hit me up. I don't think it's that much to ask for you just to send your boy a note. Buzzy and I are going to get back in the lab. Make sure that you tune in. And that means subscribing for a lot of you. It makes it super simple. And we'll catch you next week.
The Pitchwerks podcast comes to you from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a production of the Epicast Network and McTaggart, LLC. Engineering and production by Buzzy Torek and Nick Miller. For more information, show feedback, and ad sales, visit pitchwerks.com. pitchwerks.com. On social media, find and follow the show on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram using that same brand name, pitchwerks.